everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you are in the networking coffee area, if you want to come over to the main stage, we have a few chairs still open for our main stage conversation. My name's Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. We are thrilled for you to be joining us at our first Punchbowl News HQ as part of CBCF ALC. A huge thank you to Pharma for partnering with us and making this conversation and the entire day possible. When we started Punchbowl News about 3 years ago, we had the idea that there was a big hole missing in the market, that community, that kind of bringing together people from the Hill, from downtown, from the advocacy world, and bringing them into different spaces to interact, to learn, to network was something we really wanted to be a part of. And the HQ during CBC Week is exactly that. So really excited for all of our day today. We've had coffee, we've had networking this morning. We're about to kick off our main stage conversations focused on health equity. We are gonna be here throughout the day though. We've got an artist painting, we've got bags that are being screen printed, and later this afternoon, we're also gonna have a toast to the women of the CBC. So I hope you stick around. If you need to get to some sessions at the convention center, come back. We're gonna be here all day long. So with that, I'm going to welcome Managing Editor Heather Cagle to the stage for our first main stage conversation with Delaware Democrat Lisa Blunt Rochester. Heather.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello.
We both rushed over here from the Hill, where
yes.
things are crazy on the House floor as we speak.
Yes.
Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was here today. I mean, it's just a very busy day, so I appreciate your time.
Busy. I can't believe I got here on time, to be honest with you. Literally, we were running out, and Andrew and my team, we were just watching Dome Watch the whole time. They're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. So I don't even know where we are at this very minute because the vote was being held open as we walked out. And so, where are we now? 213, 215? For who?
Exactly. I mean,
wow.
I'm glad to know y'all watch Dome Watch too, because we, the reporters, are out there, constantly checking it. Okay, we're gonna do a few news of the day questions to get us started, and then we'll turn to the topic at hand. One of the ones I want to ask you about is government funding, which is what we're struggling with right now. It's unclear, as we just spoke about, whether McCarthy will even have the votes to put a Republican bill on the floor later this week. How do you see this ending? Do Democrats bail him out? What happens?
You know, it's interesting. I actually heard a Republican say that his crystal ball has a lot of fingerprints on it, meaning it's not clear. And so if that's what Republicans are saying, you can imagine for us as Democrats. It was interesting. I was standing on the floor, and our whip, Catherine Clark, everyone was literally making a beehive to Catherine. And I'm standing there, myself and Robin Kelly, asking her, what's going to happen? And then Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi walked over and said, what's going to happen? And so I think the most important thing here is to remember what the stakes are. You know, we here can, it can be a game of intrigue and all of that, but the reality is a government shutdown is not where we want this country to be. And if we just think back just a couple of months ago, when we had this debate about defaulting on our debt, like what that would have done to the American economy, but also our standing in the world. We know even our one of the credit rating bureaus downgraded us. This moment is really, it has to be not so much about Democrats or Republicans, but about us as a country. And I think the challenge we have is with Speaker McCarthy, we made a deal. We made a deal. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes it very challenging. People are saying, well, are the Democrats gonna do something, bail us out, do something? But the reality is, in the deal that we made, it was bipartisan, overwhelmingly bipartisan, almost half and half. And I remember Speaker McCarthy said he was gonna get 150 votes. And I held my vote card, and I am in the Progressive Caucus, and I'm in the New Dems. And I was standing in between Pramila and Annie Custer, holding my vote card, watching the tally. And we got to 149 Republicans. Like, I don't know, somebody was so petty, they didn't even want to give that last 150 vote. And I think in this moment, if we just remember what the stakes are, we in our caucus are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we are whole and that we as a country, that we govern. But it's difficult in this moment because I don't know if there will be a motion to vacate. And if there is, then who? And I think also the challenge we have is if the speaker can't keep his word, then it makes it hard for us to say, oh yeah, I'll vote for that, because we don't know what we'd be voting for. So I think this moment is really challenging. And like I said, we will do what we need to do for the American people, but this moment is no joke, and it can't be about one person's job security. It just can't.
You brought this up, but I want to ask your thoughts on this specifically. If McCarthy next week, on the verge of a shutdown, does put down on the floor something the Senate sends back, a bipartisan proposal that meets those funding levels you talked about, something Democrats would support, and then there is a motion to vacate filed, would you vote in favor of him in some way to keep him in the speaker's chair? So
first, I do think the first thing that does have to happen is that we do need a 30-day CR. It would be a clean CR would be good. And we do need to vote on the deal that was put forward, that was negotiated by him and the president. I think that's sort of like the basic. What happens to him? You know, I've said this to Delawareans. The fight isn't Democrats against Republicans. The fight is Republicans against Republicans. They need to pick their leader. Now, if you ask me would I vote for Hakeem Jeffries for the 16th time, yes, I would. I'll take number 16.
All right. I want to, speaking of the president, you mentioned him a little bit. You're a campaign co-chair. Republicans are pursuing an impeachment inquiry into the president. Do you think that President Biden has done enough to separate him from his son's legal troubles and the accusations that Republicans are throwing around?
I don't know if the question is if he's done enough. I think the question is, have they done enough to prove that there is a case here? There's no evidence against him. These investigations have been going on for years and even through administrations. And so to me, I said this to somebody, that there's probably nothing that he could do that is going to change them or assuage them. The question is whether the American people will see who's fighting for them, who is not distracting them and saying, hey, squirrel. I mean, I don't know, that's from some movie. I don't remember what it is, but I know it's like distraction. Because that, to me, is what this whole talk of impeachment is about. It's about a distraction, totally a distraction. And so, you know, again, what we have to do as Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries has created a regional leadership council. It represents the regions of the country. I'm representing Region 9, which is DC, Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey, Delaware. And for us, he set out a goal. Number one, we have passed some of the most consequential, transformational bills in the history of this country in a short amount of time. And we have to, number one, make sure these bills are implemented and implemented through an equity lens. We're talking about equity here. And then number two, that we're telling people what we did, and not just us telling, but showing and having other messengers do it too. That's what this moment is about for us, is for people to see it and feel it and hear it and know that their vote really does make a difference, really makes a difference.
I want to get to health equity in just a second. Like you said, this is a very important part of this panel. First, I want to ask you a question on representation in Congress. You're running for the Senate in Delaware. Only about 25% of the Senate is represented by women. There are no black women in the Senate currently.
Put a period there. Pause. No black women in the entire Senate. None. Only 2 in the history of our country. Okay, continue.
How much did that weigh on you when you were thinking about making this run? And what voice is missing? What does that mean to not have that representation in the Senate right now?
Wow. Well, I think it is clear that that representation matters. I mean, the pandemic alone, we saw so many examples. I remember I'm on the health subcommittee on energy and commerce. And I remember even in my own state, there were a lot of conversations about, vaccines and things like that. But we weren't even tracking the data by race and ethnicity. In my state, we were doing gender, we were doing where you lived, but what ended up being the biggest indicator for both contraction and deaths was your race and ethnicity. And I kept pounding the drum until that became a part of the conversation. So some of it is just being able to be the voice, being able to hold all of us accountable. The other piece for me in terms of representation is that we bring our lived and work experience. So I served as CEO of the Urban League, but I also ran the Department of Labor. But I'm a mother of Black children, a Black son who was stopped by the police at night that I had to get out of my bed for. A mother who actually has to deal with those issues of maternal mortality and the fear of losing my sisters or my daughter-in-law. I just had my first grandchild, but that was after a miscarriage that she suffered. And because I knew to get us to the right place, it made a difference. Representation matters, our lived experiences matter, and we get a better product, whether it's legislation or where the dollars go, even the Safer Communities Act. Because I had been able to work on community-based violence intervention in Delaware and hospital-based violence intervention, and because jobs are so important, I was able to feed that into the Break the Cycle of Violence legislation that Stephen Horsford led. Again, representation matters. But for me, a lot of people say, oh, you'll be making history. We don't do this work to make history. We do this work to make an impact. That's the point. That's the goal. That's the goal. It's not lost on me that it's historic. And I'm always proud when a little kid or a widow, because I was widowed when I decided to run, having never run for anything in my life, and scared the whole time. Even this time, people assume Delaware's blue. You got this. People ask my biggest opponent in this race, it's apathy. Don't sleep on Delaware. It's apathy. So to your question, representation matters. I'm excited to be doing this, but I know I can't do it alone. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to represent.
Wow, thank you. I want to ask you, I want to turn to the topic at hand, health equity. You have touched on this a little bit, specifically the Inflation Reduction Act. We're a year past it being signed into law. I know you've held roundtables back in Delaware. What are the provisions that you are hearing that has really opened things up for folks that didn't have access to health care before?
It's such a great question. Just on health equity in general, there are so many things that we've tried to work with our colleagues in a bipartisan way even. But on the Inflation Reduction Act, I think some of the things that I hear the most about in Delaware, a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, we did a roundtable on insulin. And just to hear the stories of Delawareans who could not afford insulin, on people who were doing every other day in terms of providing themselves with insulin because they couldn't afford it. Now we come back after this bill has passed and do that same roundtable, and to see both the joy, but also the fact that this is now making a difference in their lives. I hear a lot about that $35 insulin price for Medicare, and we wanted to do it for everybody, and still do, because the work is not finished. The other thing I hear a lot about is people being excited about the cap of $2,000 a year. That's unbelievable. For someone, I was also Deputy Secretary of Health and Social Services years ago in Delaware, and we were fighting for health equity back then. That's unbelievable. And then the other is an example that I'll kind of share that talks as well about how we communicate things. It is, we've had a lot of people be very excited about the vaccinations for seniors, and so through Medicare. And so we had a town hall with seniors at a high rise, and first of all, I learned that next year I will actually be eligible to live in there based on age, but that's another story. But we had this town hall, and one of my staff was sharing that there will now be no cost share for vaccinations, with Medicare. And it was quiet like this. And I leaned in and I said, what she said was, vaccinations will be free. Shingle shots will be free. Everybody started clapping. We have to talk to people in a way that they get and they understand. I don't know no cost share. I don't know what that meant. But free, I know what free is, right? So part of it is how we tell about these things, because there's so much we've done and we got to get the word out. Because if we don't, we will not improve the health status of all of us.
That actually follows into my next question. An old maxim on the Hill is Republicans talk in headlines, Democrats talk in paragraphs, right? And I think the question is, do folks know that you guys passed this, that the cost savings that they're seeing, do you think that everyone is going home across the country and accurately giving this message in a way that people can understand? Do you think they're selling it?
Well, one of the purposes of the Regional Leadership Council that Hakeem created and that Steny Hoyer actually chairs, he's our leader on this, is to help us know ways to get the word out. Everything from, we're doing webinars for how to get the dollars for your community. We're doing roundtables. We're doing media and social media. And yesterday, even, we had the artist Quavo on Capitol Hill as part of our conversation about gun violence. And I said to him, listen, he experienced gun violence, the death of his brother personally. He was a witness. And I said to him, we can say all these things till we're blue in the face. Us Congress people, we have a couple, we got a couple fans or whatever. And I said, how many, folks do you have, followers? I said, I have 20,000. He has 21 million. And so I made the point to him how important it is that there are different people, trusted people. That's what the pandemic was about too. It was the pastor, it was the pharmacist, it was the pediatrician that got people, it was the auntie and the uncle that got people to get those vaccinations. And so this moment, to me, if we're gonna shift health equity, we gotta talk about the institutional and structural issues and racial issues, right? Right, thank you for the clap in the orange dress. But we also got to talk about who's delivering messages, how we're delivering messages, and how we're targeting the money. The money. Because this is also about funding. I don't know what else more you want me to say on this, but I'm just telling you, I'm so passionate about this because I want to see us live. I want to see us thrive. And for me, it was actually, I got into this running for Congress after the unexpected death of my husband, who simply went on a business trip, played a game of basketball before his meetings, ruptured his Achilles tendon, and blood clots went to his heart and lungs. And at 52, this incredible, brilliant, smart, funny, sexy, chocolatey, omega sci-fi Q passed away. And it shouldn't have happened. And so there are things we can do to shift and move the dial. And that's why the Congressional Black Caucus is so focused, laser focused on equity and making sure we are all well, all well.
Speaking of the unfortunate death of your husband, you are actually introducing legislation next week. It's the 9th anniversary, I believe, of his passing. Can you talk a little bit about that and why this was important for you to take this up now?
Thank you for that question. It will be the Charles Rochester Blood Clot Prevention Act. And it will be bipartisan because so many people, whether you are Serena Williams or my husband, are experiencing these blood clots. One American every 6 minutes dies from a blood clot. And a lot of times we just don't even know the signs or the symptoms. And most recently, what even propelled me to do it now is because I have a family member who was in the hospital recently. And cancer, blood clots connected to cancer, that's it is, I can't even talk between cancer, pregnancy. I could name all the ways that you could get blood clots, but I had a family member who got discharged from the hospital. His leg got very warm to the touch. He was lethargic, and it was hot. I mean, and it blew up, and I said, we got to get to the hospital because I knew the signs from what I saw with my husband, and we saved this person, my family member's life. And it made me realize a lot of people don't even know the signs and symptoms. So this bill is about a national campaign to let people know what the signs and symptoms are. This bill is about making sure we have data, that we have research, that we know how to prevent these, and that we also educate those in the health profession. That's what this bill is about. And I said, as we were talking about gun violence, this is how we honor those people who have gone before us, is by doing the work and by uplifting them and letting their legacy live on. And I was so proud and grateful to have a Charles Rochester in my life that loved me like no other love. This brother was fine.
Thank you for speaking on that. I know it's probably still, obviously tough to talk about, and it's bipartisan. I mean, that's the only way something's going to get done on the Hill, so that's great. I want to ask you, you've done a lot of bipartisan work when it comes to health equity. I have a couple more questions I want to touch on. One, speaking of terms that a lot of regular folks don't know, pharmacy benefit managers and health costs. Can you talk about your bipartisan legislation? There's also some Senate work on this. What are the chances we see something in that area this year?
Yeah, I think to your point, the things that we do in a bipartisan way, number one, have a greater chance of passing, but also have a greater chance of having staying power. And so I'm fortunate that I've partnered with Buddy Carter, who is also on Energy and Commerce, to introduce a bill which is really about protecting patients from pharmacy benefit manager abuse. And look, a couple of other okay. And, and here's the thing. One of my other past jobs, I was head of state personnel in Delaware. And so it was everything from the hiring and the firing and training, but it was also benefits. And so I understand a goal. One of our goals is keeping healthcare costs down, but our bigger goal is making sure that our health status is there and that it is improved. And what has happened is that there is sort of this opaqueness. We don't understand. There's not transparency in how they are making money and how much money they're making and how that translates to increased costs for patients. And so this bill is really about creating transparency. It's about making sure that the incentives are properly aligned for, us to. Yes, there is money involved in healthcare, but that's not the purpose of healthcare. And so what I think is important about this is that, as you said, it's Democrat, Republican, House, and Senate. The chances, first we got to get through what we're going through right now. If we don't get through this moment of potential government shutdown, all this conversation is a moot point. And Andrew just looked at his phone again. I don't know if that means there's some new news breaking, but first we've got to get through that. And then for us, there are these bipartisan bills that we have agreement on. I even have a bill on supply chains, which a lot of people weren't talking about supply chains before the pandemic, but supply chains are sexy, I'm gonna tell you. I mean, literally, it is everything from making sure we've got infant formula to lumber to build houses and keep the costs down, to our national security. but it's bipartisan work that we're trying to do for all of us. And so this bill, the PBM reform bill, is one that I can see actually passing in this Congress.
Yeah, and I mean, it passed unanimously or near unanimously out of the Senate Finance Committee, which when does that happen anymore? So
Exactly. That's an applause line, too, probably.
we're quickly, unfortunately, running out of time, and I know you got to get back to the Hill, but I want to ask you about the maternal mortality crisis, which disproportionately affects Black women in particular in America. You have legislation addressing maternal suicide. Can you talk about this issue? And there is also another area, there's bipartisan support here too.
Yes. We actually have maternal mortality caucus. Some of you are very familiar with the work of Robin Kelly, one of our members of the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as Lauren Underwood, who has also led the Momnibus. I had a bill called the Moms Matter Act, which was folded into one of our big bills, and it was really focused on a couple of things. One was really focusing on the mental health and also substance use disorder for particularly Black and brown women, because we are 3 to 4 times higher rate of death through maternal mortality. And we've seen, that it's not just, do you have access to health care? People like Serena Williams has talked about this, and Beyonce. Like, you can be rich, and our outcomes are still worse. And so this bill, this work is really about leveling the playing field, making sure that even those people who are providing services are culturally competent, not just competent, culturally superstars. We want you to know, and we want to also make sure that the people that are providing the services look like us and understand our experiences as well. So I'm proud that we were able to get the Moms Matter Act in, but we still have so much more work to do to make sure that Black and brown women and all of us are safe and are able, especially in America. Our maternal mortality rate should not be this, and it is. And so we'll continue to do that work, as I mentioned, with some of the great champions that we have on the CBC. And again, we just encourage all of you to stay engaged in this work. We can't do it alone. And the reality is, the theme of my campaign is Bright Hope. It was the church that my grandmother attended for 70 years in Philadelphia. And we use that as the theme because in this moment, things can feel very dark and very dim. And it requires us to have some hope, but bright hope, like a different level of hope than you've ever had before, pulling from the recesses of your core, but also our collective. When we come together, it's like the proverb, the African proverb, sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. Unbreakable.
Thank you so much for your time, Congresswoman Blunt Rochester, and talking to us about such important issues, health access, health equity, personal issues that touch you. I know you have to get back to the Hill, but we really appreciate it. Thank you.
I've enjoyed this, believe you me.